Somewhere, there will be a last normal morning. A morning when the coffee machine works, the news loads, the traffic app gives you an alternate route. A morning that feels exactly like every other morning. And then, at some point during that morning, something fails. Something small. Something invisible. And the 72-hour clock begins. Imagine a single thread. On its own, it might seem insignificant, easily snapped. But what happens when you weave thousands, millions, even billions of these threads together? You get a fabric of incredible strength and complexity, a tapestry so vast it covers the entire globe. This isn't just a metaphor. It's the reality of our modern world. We are living within a colossal digital fabric woven from countless interconnected threads. Each thread represents a piece of our global digital infrastructure. Think about it. That online order you just placed, that's a thread. The video call you had with family across the ocean, another thread. The satellite navigation that guides your car, the financial transactions that power our economies, the very flow of information that shapes our daily lives, all are individual threads woven into this intricate tapestry. The strength of this fabric comes from its interconnectedness. Each thread supports and is supported by countless others. This is the marvel of our age, a system of unprecedented scale and efficiency. But this incredible strength also hides a profound vulnerability. What happens when you pull on just one of those threads? In a simple piece of cloth, pulling a thread might cause a small pucker, a minor imperfection. But in our hyper-connected digital fabric, the consequences can be far more dramatic. The dependencies are so complex, so deeply intertwined, that a single point of failure can cascade through the entire system. A single pulled thread can cause a ripple that travels across the entire tapestry, distorting the pattern in ways we can't always predict. Let's consider a real-world example. A few years ago, a major cloud services provider experienced an outage. It wasn't a massive, catastrophic event at the source, just a simple human error, an incorrect command typed into a system. It was like a single tiny thread being tugged. But this one service was a foundational thread for thousands of other companies and websites. Suddenly, streaming services went dark. Online tools for businesses stopped working. Even smart home devices like light bulbs and doorbells became unresponsive. A small, localized problem rapidly spiraled into a widespread disruption, affecting millions of people who had no idea their smart toaster relied on a server hundreds of miles away. This is the paradox of our digital age. The very complexity that gives our system its power also creates hidden points of fragility. We've built a global marvel of engineering, a testament to human ingenuity. But we've also created a system where the failure of a seemingly minor component can have disproportionately large effects. A software bug in one company's code can ground an entire airline fleet. A cyberattack on a single utility can disrupt power for an entire region. A break in a single undersea cable can slow down internet access for a whole continent. The threads are woven so tightly that a disturbance in one area is felt everywhere. So, what does this mean for us? It means we need to think differently about resilience. It's not just about fortifying individual threads, making them stronger. It's about understanding the entire pattern of the weave. We need to build systems with more redundancy, creating alternate pathways so that if one thread breaks, the load can be shifted. We need greater transparency so we can map out these complex dependencies and understand the potential ripple effects before they happen. And as individuals, It's about fostering a deeper awareness of the invisible infrastructure that supports our modern lives. The digital fabric is not something we can simply opt out of. It's the world we now inhabit. It empowers us, connects us, and enables progress on a scale unimaginable to previous generations. But as we continue to weave this tapestry, adding new threads of innovation like AI and the Internet of Things, we must do so with care and foresight. We must be the mindful weavers, understanding that the strength of the whole depends on the integrity of every part, and that a single pulled thread can unravel more than we might expect. Let's appreciate this incredible creation, but let's also be vigilant in maintaining it. Thanks for watching, and if you found this thought-provoking, consider subscribing for more deep dives into the systems that shape our world. To understand what the failure of digital infrastructure actually means, not in the abstract, not as a metaphor, but in the specific, material, hour-by-hour sequence of consequences, you have to first understand what digital infrastructure actually does. Most people, when they think about the internet going down, think about inconvenience. No social media, no streaming, no email. The image that comes to mind is frustration, the spinning loading circle, the error message, the mild irritation of a disconnected afternoon. This mental model is not wrong exactly. It is simply incomplete to the point of being dangerous. The internet is not primarily a communication network for human beings. It is primarily a coordination network for physical systems. Every container ship currently crossing an ocean is navigating using GPS signals relayed through satellite networks and processed by onboard digital systems that communicate continuously with port authorities, logistics coordinators, and customs systems in the destination country. Every truck on every highway in every developed nation is tracked, routed, and scheduled through digital systems that optimize delivery windows, fuel consumption, driver hours, and warehouse capacity in real time. Every warehouse in the global supply chain operates on inventory management systems that trigger automatic reorder processes when stock falls below defined thresholds, processes that require network connectivity to function. Every payment terminal in every retail location requires network access to verify transactions. Every automated production line in every factory requires digital control systems that communicate with supplier networks, quality management systems, and distribution coordinators. Remove the network, and you do not simply slow these systems down, you stop them. Not gradually, immediately, because they were not designed to operate in a degraded network environment. They were designed to operate in a functional one, and they have no meaningful fallback for the alternative. This is the first thing to understand about a digital infrastructure collapse. The physical world does not continue at reduced efficiency. It stops. And it stops faster than almost anyone outside the logistics and emergency management communities understands. Now consider GPS specifically, because GPS is the element of digital infrastructure whose failure is most underestimated and most consequential. The Global Positioning System is a network of satellites, currently 31 operational satellites in medium Earth orbit that transmit precise timing signals to receivers on the ground. GPS receivers calculate their position by comparing the timing of signals from multiple satellites and using the differences to triangulate location. The system works because the satellites carry atomic clocks accurate to within nanoseconds, and because the signal propagation times at the speed of light translate those nanosecond differences into meter-level position accuracy. But GPS is not primarily a navigation system. That is its most visible application, but it is not its most critical one. GPS is primarily a timing system. The financial system uses GPS timing signals to time-stop transactions to microsecond precision, a requirement for the high-frequency trading systems that account for a substantial fraction of global market volume and for the synchronization of settlement systems across time zones. The power grid uses GPS timing to synchronize the phase of alternating current across regional networks, a requirement for the stable transmission of electricity across the interconnected grid. Telecommunications networks use GPS timing to synchronize the handoffs between cell towers that allow mobile devices to maintain calls and data connections as they move. The Internet, as routing protocols, use timing signals to coordinate the packet switching that directs data across the network. Disable GPS, and you do not simply strand drivers who cannot find their destination. You desynchronize the financial system. You destabilize the power grid. You degrade telecommunications. You slow and eventually stop the routing of internet traffic. You create a cascading failure across every system that assumed, in its design, that precise timing information would always be available. This is the architecture of catastrophic dependency, not one system relying on another. Every system relying on every other system simultaneously, through a web of dependencies so dense and so normalized that the dependencies themselves have become invisible. There are two primary mechanisms by which this architecture could fail at the scale required to trigger the cascade. The first is a coordinated cyberattack targeting critical infrastructure simultaneously, across multiple systems and multiple nations. This is not a speculative scenario. The technical capability to conduct attacks of this kind exists, has been demonstrated in smaller scale incidents, and is actively developed by the military and intelligence agencies of multiple nation-states. The 2015 attack on the Ukrainian power grid, which caused blackouts affecting approximately 230,000 customers and was attributed to Russian state-sponsored hackers, demonstrated that power grid infrastructure is penetrable through digital means. The 2021 Colonial Pipeline attack demonstrated that ransomware targeting industrial control systems could disrupt fuel supply to a substantial portion of the eastern United States within days. These were limited attacks conducted against individual targets, with response and recovery occurring within the context of a still functional broader infrastructure. A coordinated attack targeting the GPS constellation, major internet exchange points, financial system clearing networks, and power grid control systems, simultaneously conducted by a sophisticated state actor with years of preparation, would not be limited. It would not occur within the context of a still functional broader infrastructure. It would be the infrastructure failure, and the response would occur within the context of the collapse itself. The second mechanism is the Kessler syndrome. In 1978, NASA scientist Donald Kessler described a scenario that has become increasingly relevant as the density of objects in low Earth orbit has grown. The scenario is this: a collision between two objects in orbit generates a debris field. The debris field, moving at orbital velocities of approximately 28,000 kilometers per hour, collides with other objects, generating more debris. The additional debris collides with more objects. The cascade accelerates, and at sufficient debris density, the cascade becomes self-sustaining, a chain reaction of collisions that progressively fills certain orbital shells with fragments moving too fast to avoid and too numerous to track, rendering those orbital regions unusable for satellites for decades or centuries. There are currently more than 27,000 tracked objects in Earth orbit, and an estimated 500,000 objects too small to track, but large enough to damage or destroy operational satellites. The density of objects in low Earth orbit has increased substantially in the past decade with the deployment of large commercial satellite constellations. The probability of a collision sufficient to initiate a Kessler cascade is not zero. It is not even negligibly small. It is a finite, calculable, and by some estimates non-trivial probability that increases with each additional object placed in orbit. A Kessler cascade affecting the orbital shells used by GPS satellites, medium Earth orbit at approximately 20,000 kilometers altitude, would not destroy all GPS satellites immediately. It would destroy enough of them and generate enough debris risk for the remainder that the constellation would become non-functional within a time frame measured in days to weeks. And without GPS, the cascade of ground-level consequences described above begins. Either mechanism, Cyberattack or Kessler cascade, produces the same initial condition. The digital infrastructure that coordinates the physical world begins to fail, and the 72-hour clock starts. Hour zero, the failure begins somewhere. It begins in a way that is not immediately distinguishable from the ordinary small failures that occur in complex systems every day. A network segment goes down. A satellite loses contact. A financial system reports a synchronization error. The monitoring systems that track these anomalies flag them. Technicians begin to investigate. Escalation procedures are initiated. In the first minutes and hours, the failure looks like a problem. A serious problem, perhaps, but a problem of the kind that has been seen before and resolved before. The people whose job it is to manage these systems are competent. They have response procedures. They have backup systems. They begin executing their protocols, but the failure is not a problem. It is the beginning of a cascade. And the backup systems that are supposed to absorb the load of the failed primary systems are themselves dependent on the network infrastructure that is failing. The redundancy that was designed into the system was designed for localized failures, not systemic ones. It was designed for the loss of a single node, not the degradation of the fabric itself. Within the first few hours, the failures begin to compound in ways that the response protocols were not designed to address. Payment systems begin to fail across geographic regions. Logistics coordination software loses network connectivity and begins operating on cached data that is hours old. GPS-dependent routing systems begin giving incorrect or unavailable directions. Power grid operators begin losing the telemetry data they need to balance load across the network. The public, at this stage, is aware that something is wrong. But the awareness is patchy, confused, and filtered through communication channels that are themselves beginning to degrade. Social media reports contradict each other. Official communications are delayed. The picture is incomplete. This is hour 3, and the supermarket shelves are still full. What happens when the digital world we've built simply stops working? Not a glitch, not a slowdown, but a full-stop failure. This isn't science fiction. It's a look at how fragile our modern society might be. Let's start the clock. Hour 12. The failure is no longer a rumor. It's a hard reality. Across the region, payment systems are down. You want to buy groceries? Good luck. Your credit cards are useless plastic. Your phone can't tap to pay. Cash is king, but who carries much cash anymore? The few ATMs that might have worked are dark screens cut off from the network. The small amount of physical money in circulation is disappearing fast, hoarded by the lucky few who got to it first. And it's not just money. Think about fuel. The complex digital systems that manage fuel deliveries are offline. Trucks that were already on the road made their last drop, but now they sit idle. Fuel depots are full, but they can't send out new shipments. At the gas stations that still have fuel, the lines stretch for hours. People are starting to realize this is serious. Hospitals are in a state of emergency. They're running on backup power and backup procedures, but those are meant for a few hours, not days. The just-in-time supply chains that deliver vital medicines, blood, and equipment have broken. Today's orders never arrived. Tomorrow's can't even be placed. In the supermarkets, a quiet panic is setting in. The shelves for essentials like bread, milk, and bottled water are thinning out. It's not a supply problem yet, it's a demand problem. People are scared, and scared people buy everything they can, accelerating the very crisis they fear. This is hour 12, and the clock is speeding up, hour 24. A full day has passed. Nothing is fixed. The logistics network is still shattered. The trucks meant to restock supermarkets never left their warehouses. The software that plots their routes is dead. The systems to pay for their fuel are offline. In the cities, grocery store shelves are a ghost town of essentials. Only the weird specialty items nobody wants are left. The good news? Water is still running. Most municipal water systems have robust backups. But there's a catch. Water treatment requires a constant supply of chemicals, chlorine coagulants. Those chemicals are delivered by the same broken supply chains. The reserves at the treatment plants are measured in days or weeks, not months. The tap water is safe for now, but the timer is ticking. Hospitals are now forced to ration care. All non-urgent procedures are canceled. But emergencies don't stop. Car crashes from failed traffic lights. Medical crises from people who can't get their prescriptions. The ERS are overflowing. And the backup generators that power these critical facilities are getting thirsty. Diesel fuel is becoming the most precious resource. Who gets the remaining fuel? The hospital? The data center trying to restore the network? The fire department? These are no longer theoretical questions. This is hour 24. The systems we built to fix this kind of disaster are themselves broken. They rely on the very infrastructure that has collapsed. We've entered a feedback loop of failure. The modern world runs on a digital heartbeat. And for the last 24 hours, that heart has stopped beating. What happens next? Thanks for watching. If this thought experiment made you think, hit that like button and subscribe for more deep dives into the systems that run our world. Stay curious and stay prepared. Hour 48. The word emergency managers use for what is happening now is cascading. Not because it's a technical term, but because no other word captures the way failures in one system are generating failures in adjacent systems, which then generate failures in systems adjacent to those. The cascade isn't linear. It's not predictable from any single failure point. It is the emergent behavior of a system that was designed for normal conditions, encountering conditions that are not normal, and failing in ways the design never anticipated because it was never meant to anticipate this. Social order is under stress, the way it always comes under stress when the systems that manage resource scarcity prices, supply chains, retail distribution stop functioning. The scarcity isn't severe enough yet for the most extreme outcomes, but the trajectory is visible. And the people whose job it is to manage public order are doing so with resources communications, fuel, coordination systems that are themselves impaired. The political response is active but constrained. Governments are issuing communications through whatever channels are still open. Emergency management agencies are trying to coordinate resource distribution with manual procedures, backups that were last seriously practiced years or even decades ago. Military assets are being deployed to help with logistics and keeping order. The response is real. It is not sufficient. This is hour 48. Hour 72. The window has closed. Not that everything collapses at this exact moment. Cascades don't respect clean numerical thresholds. But the 72-hour mark is where the arithmetic of just-in-time supply chains reaches its designed limit. It's where backup power for critical facilities begins to die, where manual procedures reveal their capacity limits, and where the behavior of a population under stress shifts from anxious compliance to something less predictable. What happens after hour 72 depends on factors we can't precisely model. The speed of infrastructure recovery, the effectiveness of emergency governance, the distribution of physical resources, and the decisions made by actors at every level in the preceding hours. The range of outcomes is wide, but the floor of that range, the worst-case trajectory, looks like this. Food distribution breaks down in dense urban areas within days. Water treatment is compromised within 1 to 3 weeks as chemical reserves are depleted. Medical care becomes severely rationed as supply chains for pharmaceuticals fail and backup power for hospitals runs out. The social and political consequences of these physical failures unfold over weeks and months. The recovery, when it comes, isn't a restoration, it's a reconstruction. And reconstruction, in a system this complex, doesn't happen quickly. The interdependencies that made the system so productive now make it slow to restart, because each component needs other components to be functional before it can become functional itself. The sequencing of recovery is a technical problem of extraordinary difficulty, and it must be solved by institutions that are themselves operating under the constraints of the failure they trying to reverse. Now step back from the timeline. Step back from the empty shells and the useless payment terminals and the hospitals rationing medicine. Look at the shape of what just happened. A civilization of 8 billion people, the most technologically sophisticated civilization on the planet, became so dependent on a layer of invisible infrastructure that its simple failure, not its destruction, just its failure to function, is enough to interrupt the supply of food to its cities within 3 days. This is not a design flaw. It's not the result of negligence. It's the result of optimization, of the same relentless, rational, efficiency-maximizing process that produced the incredible productivity gains of the past 3 decades. Just-in-time supply chains are more efficient than holding inventory. Digital payment systems are more efficient than cash. GPS-optimized routing is more efficient than static scheduling. Every step we took in the direction of efficiency was a step away from redundancy. Every step away from redundancy was a step toward fragility. And this fragility accumulated invisibly because it only reveals itself in conditions the optimized system was never designed for. The Shanxi variable, again, a different system. The same logic. Thanks for watching. The Kessler syndrome was described in 1978. The dependency of critical infrastructure on GPS was well understood by the early 2000s. The vulnerability of power grids and financial systems to coordinated. Cyberattack has been documented in government reports, academic literature, and congressional testimony for more than 2 decades. The 72-hour supply chain vulnerability has been known to logistics researchers and emergency managers for years. The knowledge exists. What does not exist, at sufficient scale, is the institutional response. The hardening of critical infrastructure against electromagnetic and cyber threats. The development and maintenance of non-digital backup systems for essential services. The strategic reserve programs for critical supply chain inputs. The regular, serious, full-scale exercises of emergency procedures under conditions that actually test their adequacy. These measures are expensive. They are inefficient. They produce no measurable benefit in normal conditions, and normal conditions are the conditions under which political and economic decisions are made. The case for investing in resilience against low probability, high consequence events is technically clear and politically difficult, because the beneficiaries of the investment are hypothetical future populations in crisis conditions, and the costs are certain present populations in normal ones. This is not a new problem. It is the oldest problem in civilizational risk management, and the historical record of how civilizations have managed it is not encouraging. The Fermi paradox offers a specific and unsettling interpretation of the silence of the universe. Perhaps the silence is not the silence of empty space. Perhaps it is the silence of civilizations that reached a specific point in their technological development, the point at which their physical systems became so dependent on digital coordination that a single category of failure could interrupt the supply of food to their populations within 72 hours and did not successfully navigate the transition. Not because the failure was inevitable, not because no one understood the risk, but because the gap between understanding the vulnerability and building the political and institutional will to address it proved, in each case, wider than the margin of safety the system actually provided. Every civilization that develops digital infrastructure reaches this threshold. It is not unique to Earth. It is the natural consequence of optimization, of the same drive toward efficiency that makes digital coordination so productive and makes its failure so consequential. The question is whether any civilization successfully hardens its systems before the failure occurs. Whether the investment in resilience happens before the crisis or in response to it. Whether the last normal morning is followed by a recovery or by the beginning of something that does not recover. Somewhere there will be a last normal morning. The coffee machine will work. The news will load. The traffic app will give you an alternate route, and you will take it, and you will arrive where you are going, and the day will proceed in the way that days proceed when the invisible infrastructure is functioning. And somewhere in that morning, in the satellites above you, in the fiber optic cables beneath your feet, in the server farms that process 10,000 transactions per second without anyone noticing, something will be accumulating. A stress, a vulnerability, a thread in the fabric that is carrying slightly more than it was designed to carry. You will not see it, no one will see it, until the morning when they do. And by then, the clock will already be running.